You're standing in front of your entire family, successful business partners, and high society friends when your father announces he's giving your brother $1.5 million and then looks you dead in the eye and calls you a complete failure. What would you do? Well, what happened next at this wealthy family's party will leave you absolutely speechless. This is the incredible true story of Sophia, a woman who chose creativity over cash, kindness over conformity, and how her grandmother delivered the most epic plot twist that nobody saw coming. Trust me, you need to hear this until the very end because the revenge? It's legendary. So let's dive into this wild ride that proves sometimes the people who seem powerless hold all the cards. Sophia Montgomery grew up in one of those old money families where your last name carries more weight than your character. You know the type: massive estates, generations of wealth, and expectations so high they could crush your soul. From day one, Sophia was supposed to be the perfect heiress. Graduate from an Ivy League school, marry someone equally prestigious, and carry on the family tradition of being, well, exactly like everyone before her. But here's the thing about Sophia. She had her own dreams. While her family obsessed over stock portfolios and social status, she fell in love with poetry, painting, and actually helping people. Can you imagine? Instead of climbing the corporate ladder, she chose to climb into the hearts of others through her writing. By 32, Sophia was living in a tiny Brooklyn apartment surrounded by books, art supplies, and furniture she'd found at thrift stores. She made her living as a freelance writer, ran a blog about mental health and creative freedom, and spent her weekends volunteering for causes she believed in. To her, this was success. To her parents, this was a complete embarrassment. Now, let's talk about her brother Nathan. 6 years younger and everything their parents ever wanted in a child. Top of his class at Yale, joined the family investment firm right after graduation, dated the right people, said the right things, and basically lived his entire life according to the Montgomery family playbook. Richard and Eleanor Montgomery, Sophia's parents, treated Nathan like he was their masterpiece and Sophia like she was their biggest mistake. Family dinners became battlegrounds where Sophia's achievements were ignored and her ideas were met with eye rolls and condescending smiles. You know those moments when someone asks what you've been up to, and you can tell they are already judging your answer before you even speak. That was Sophia's reality every single time she came home. But there was one person who saw something different in Sophia. Her grandmother, Margaret Montgomery. At 85 years old, Margaret was the real powerhouse of the family. Sharp as a tack, fiercely independent, and absolutely nobody's fool. While everyone else saw Sophia's choices as rebellion, Margaret saw them as courage. While others criticized her grandiose compassion, Margaret recognized it as strength. Margaret had built her own fortune over the decades, separate from the family business. She owned estates across Europe, possessed a priceless art collection, and had jewelry that belonged in museums. But more importantly, she had wisdom that came from watching her family lose sight of what really mattered. Every year, the Montgomerys hosted their legendary celebration of legacy at the family estate. Picture the most extravagant party you can imagine, then multiply it by 10. We're talking about waiters in white gloves, classical orchestras, crystal chandeliers, and guest lists that read like a who's who of high society. This wasn't just a party, it was a statement about power, wealth, and family pride. But this particular year, something was different. There was tension in the air, whispers in the corners, and Margaret had a look in her eyes that suggested she was planning something big. The evening started exactly as you'd expect. Guests mingled in the marble-floored courtyard, champagne flowed like water, and everyone played their parts perfectly. The orchestra filled the air with beautiful melodies while people in designer outfits discussed their latest business ventures and exotic vacations. As the night reached its peak, spotlights illuminated the garden stage. Richard and Eleanor Montgomery stepped forward with the kind of confident smiles that come from knowing you're about to make a big announcement. Eleanor spoke first, her voice carrying across the silent crowd. "We are gathered here tonight to honor the future of our family." Then Richard took over, his chest puffed out with pride. "With great joy and certainty, we announce that the full Montgomery Trust $1.5 million, along with our legacy investments, will go to our beloved son, Nathan. The crowd erupted. Cheers, applause, camera flashes. It was like a scene from a movie. Nathan stood there with that perfect balance of humility and pride, nodding graciously as people congratulated him. Meanwhile, Sophia stood to the side, her champagne glass untouched, watching this performance with a mixture of hurt and resignation. But Richard wasn't done. He turned toward Sophia with a smirk that could cut glass and said, "As for Sophia, you've always preferred your own path. May your passion guide you, because that's all you're getting." Some people laughed. Others cringed. But Sophia just stood there, locking eyes with her father, feeling a storm of emotions building in her chest. The humiliation was overwhelming, but something told her to wait, to watch, to see what would happen next. And then, the moment that changed everything. "Now it's my turn." Margaret Montgomery rose slowly from her chair. Despite her age, despite needing a cane to walk, her presence commanded the attention of every single person at that party. The laughter died. The whispers stopped. Even the orchestra seemed to pause as this elderly woman made her way to the stage with the kind of dignity that can't be bought or taught. When she reached the microphone, Margaret's voice was clear and strong. "You applaud the obedient, but you forget the power of the misfits, the rebels, the brave." From her coat, she pulled out a leather envelope that seemed to hold the weight of the world. "6 months ago, I changed my will. Every estate, every account, every antique, every piece of art I own will go to Sophia." The silence was deafening. Then came the gasps, the murmurs, the sound of a family dynasty cracking right down the middle. Eleanor turned white as a ghost. Richard actually stumbled backward. Nathan's jaw clenched so tight you could hear his teeth grinding. Margaret wasn't finished, because she chose not to inherit your arrogance. She chose to be free, and she chose to care about others more than appearances. The elegant party dissolved into chaos. Some guests approached Sophia with genuine smiles and quiet congratulations. Others couldn't get out of there fast enough, as if her newfound fortune might somehow contaminate them. The social hierarchy that had ruled this family for generations had just been completely flipped upside down. Sophia retreated to her room in the guest wing, her hands shaking as she opened the envelope. The documents were real. Margaret had transferred her personal fortune, multiple European estates, centuries-old jewelry, and an art collection that represented 6 decades of careful curation. The woman who had been called a failure just hours earlier was now worth more than the rest of her family combined. The aftermath was exactly what you'd expect from a family more concerned with image than integrity. Eleanor spent the next morning banging on Margaret's door, screaming about madness and family destruction. Richard refused to speak to anyone for days. Nathan tried to maintain his composure in public, but anyone with eyes could see he was absolutely seething. But here's where the story gets even more incredible. While sorting through Margaret's papers and belongings, Sophia discovered something that would change everything she thought she knew about her family. Hidden in a secret compartment of an old armoire, she found a letter dated 25 years earlier, written in her grandmother's careful handwriting. The letter mentioned a child, a girl, a mistake that her parents had wanted to erase from history. Late one night, as Margaret lay weakened by illness, Sophia finally asked the question that had been burning in her mind. "Grandma, who was Isabel?" Margaret's response shattered everything Sophia thought she knew about her family. Isabel had been her older sister, born with cerebral palsy. Instead of embracing their daughter's differences, Richard and Eleanor had been ashamed. They gave her away like unwanted furniture, erasing her from their perfect family picture. But Margaret had found Isabel. She'd paid for her care, visited her regularly, and watched her grow into a beautiful, gentle soul who expressed herself through poetry. Isabel died at just 19 years old, but her words lived on in journals that Margaret had carefully preserved. In the estate's attic, Sophia discovered an iron chest filled with Isabel's writings. Page after page of hauntingly beautiful poetry about longing, about imaginary families, about dreams of being held by a mother who never looked back. Reading those words was like looking into a mirror of her own rejection. Here was a sister who had experienced the same conditional love, the same family that valued image over humanity. Sophia made a vow that night. Isabel's story would not remain buried. She wrote a book called The Forgotten Heirloom, blending memoir and fiction to tell the story of two sisters separated by silence and selfishness, of a grandmother who chose love over legacy, and of a family that prized perfection over people. The book became a sensation. Critics called it a haunting triumph. Book clubs devoured it. Podcasts dissected it. Journalists began asking uncomfortable questions about the Montgomery family's real history. The impact was swift and devastating for her parents and brother. Richard was forced to resign from the board of Montgomery Holdings. Nathan's firm faced internal investigations. Eleanor became a recluse, unable to face the public scrutiny that came with being exposed as the type of people who abandon their own child. But Sophia didn't just want revenge through words. She wanted to create something beautiful from all that pain. Using Margaret's inheritance, she launched the Isabel Foundation, opening community centers, funding inclusive schools, and providing art therapy for disabled children. One building even housed a permanent exhibit featuring Isabel's journals alongside Sophia's own paintings inspired by her sister's words. Margaret passed away quietly one morning, her hand in Sophia's. The funeral was private, attended by only a few people who had truly known and loved the woman behind the fortune. After the service, Nathan approached Sophia near the rose garden where they used to play as children. "You destroyed everything," he said, his voice hollow with defeat. Sophia looked at him with calm resolve. "I rebuilt something better." He stared at her for a long moment, searching for words that could defend the legacy he'd clung to his entire life. Finding none, he simply walked away. But the most powerful moment came when a distant cousin named Elise approached Sophia later that day. With tears in her eyes, she whispered, "Your book changed my life. I have a daughter with autism, and you gave her hope. You gave us both hope." Standing at Margaret's grave as the wind rustled through the trees, Sophia whispered, "You saw me when no one else did, and you gave me the voice to change the world." She placed a rose beside a worn copy of Isabel's journal, knowing that her grandmother's greatest gift wasn't money or property, it was the courage to choose love over legacy. Years have passed since that night when everything changed. Children now play and laugh in sunlit rooms at the Isabel Foundation centers. Sophia has become an award-winning author and global advocate, continuing to write, speak, and heal broken systems. One wall inside the foundation bears golden letters that read, "To those the world forgets, we remember you." And in a quiet gallery nearby, beneath a portrait of Isabel, hangs a handwritten poem by Sophia that captures everything this incredible journey represents. From silence comes a storm. From the castaway comes the crown. What they hid in shadows now shines down. This story proves that sometimes the people who seem to have the least power are actually holding all the cards. Margaret could have played it safe, followed family expectations, and let the cycle of conditional love continue. Instead, she chose to bet everything on the granddaughter who dared to be different, who chose compassion over conformity, who had the courage to care about others more than appearances. So the next time someone tells you that following your heart is foolish, that being different is dangerous, or that kindness is weakness, remember Sophia Montgomery. Remember that the greatest inheritance isn't money or status. It's the courage to be authentically yourself and the wisdom to lift others up along the way. If this story moved you, hit that like button and subscribe for more incredible tales of people who dared to be different and changed the world because of it. And hey, drop a comment below. What would you have done in Sophia's situation? Would you have had the courage to forgive your family, or would revenge have been too tempting? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Until next time, keep choosing courage over comfort. And remember, sometimes the biggest plot twists come from the people everyone underestimates.